What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today's SolSeraph. Over the course of the last 5 years, while trying to grow this YouTube channel, I have, of course, played thousands of different games. Stuff like really expansive RPGs, really tight first-person shooters, and some stuff that are basically very peculiar projects that don't fit into a single genre. With that being said, I do believe that SolSeraph might be the very weirdest game I have ever played. Now the reason why is because just by glancing at it, you can tell that this is actually a 2D side-scrolling hack-and-slash platformer with also world-building elements. Now that sounds like such a random, complicated mess, but it does sort of work. Now I just want to warn you right up front, this is the kind of game that takes about 2 hours of just sitting back and being open-minded to fully make sense. But now that I've had a chance to beat it, I can say that I did enjoy the experience, but it's certainly not without its flaws. So this stuff may seem very scattered and just barely connected unless you've played the very obscure hidden gem ActRaiser back on the Super Nintendo. It's basically this game but 16-bit. Now SolSeraph is essentially like a spiritual sequel to that. It has the same style of music, it has the same style of action, and it has a very similar premise. We're sort of playing as like a protective guardian angel of these early tribes. But not only are we trying to guard them, we're trying to stop the forces of evil on this early and slowly expanding Earth. The way this is done is in 2 separate things at once. So let's start off by talking about the map stuff, because this is by far the more complicated aspect of it. Essentially, every single map starts off with you just having a tiny little campfire and usually a couple very young humans talking about philosophy, things about growing up and aging and the concepts of morality. And then once they're done talking, you get a chance to start establishing your early outpost. You're going to need to do things like build housing, grow crops, that way people can eat, and of course start to construct things like barracks so people can be trained in combat, or giant archer towers so you can shoot down the evil demon bats that try and hunt you down. Essentially the way this works is you get 5 minutes of setup, you get a chance to actually set things down, chop down trees, establish your own base of operations before the attacks begin. After this begins the combat wave, where basically the nearest outposts of bad guys start sending tons and tons of units at you, but they follow these very set paths. It's very much a tower defense game, but with much more world constructing elements to it. As time goes on, you unlock more stuff like magic towers, crazy upgrades to make it where your units have more abilities when they fight, but what you need to keep in mind is that resources are very scarce. Trying to actually keep things up and running requires a lot of times that you're just in a perpetual cycle of bulldozing the buildings you don't need, that way you can get additional resources to build the stuff you do. Now once you've actually managed to wipe out a couple waves of these people, you start to get enough energy to build a temple. Once you have one of these temples made, somebody can go and pray in it, which basically dispels this evil magic and allows you to attack their base directly. When you do this, it's basically the time to go to the 2D style gameplay where you become the awesome angel SolSeraph and get to start chopping up stuff directly. Now I have to say, there is definitely a little bit of a learning curve with this. This is a very retro styled project, which means you die quick, there's almost no healing items, and also you need to just worry about the fact that things don't always appear the way they should. Like just as an example, as you can see here in the background, there's lots of enemies that are constantly coming towards me, but I can only actually attack them when they're directly in my face. There's a lot of this style stuff in the game. It very much feels like if somebody took a bunch of Super Nintendo developers, put them in a time machine, and then brought them to the modern day. There's a lot of very archaic artifacts to this gameplay logic. It's not super good, but it is also fun. I have to say that the level design in general is typically all the same. It's normally You're dropped in here, you start hacking people up, and you use your magic to try and do some ranged attacks, until eventually everything is dead, you get an upgrade, and you get to leave. It's something that's not exactly super creative, but it still works. And as you go on and start defeating the giant elemental beasts, you get extra magics that allow you to do things like use ice or fire or electricity to further use in combat. None of this really dramatically changes the game, but I like it because it sort of creates a very interesting ebb and flow, where it's build a base, defend a base, attack a base. It's you establish your own tribe, you get a little bit of story, and then you get to go in there and just physically chop stuff up on your own. With all this being said, I do think that the biggest downside of this game in general is that the difficulty is just extremely erratic. I mean, some of these missions are incredibly difficult and I got stuck on for hours. Some of them I beat right away. Sometimes I'd actually progress deeper in the story and get more of the cool unlocks, and then I'd go back and try something and immediately one-shot it. It's one of those games that it doesn't seem like they had enough time to fully playtest everything, because they're just not a lot of balance where it needs it most. Also, the biggest thing that I think really frustrated me at times is the fact that in these missions, when you're actually down there on the ground as your angel himself, one of the major issues I had is that since you only have a singular health bar to try and get through all this, when you run out of that HP, you are dead. It is a game over. You do not get to come back. You have to start the entire mission over again, and the reason that's frustrating is because there is just so much random junk. There's spiders falling out of trees, there's infinite gaps where if you make one wrong double jump, you instantly die. Sometimes there'll just be a foe who will pop out of the background, hit you, cause knockback, and you fall to your death, and you lose 15 minutes of work. It's just one of those things where this game needs something. It needs more of a healing system, or it needs something that just makes it where all of this feels a little bit more fair. It's not that I'm complaining that this is retro difficulty, it's that at times you just die and lose a bunch of progress for no other reason than bad luck. Overall though, I did enjoy my time with SolSeraph simply because it's really nice to see something that has classic sensibilities. It's not always going to be even, it's not always going to be fair, but when you actually see the credits roll, you're very happy that you started this journey in the first place. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving SolSeraph a 7.5 out of 10. If you're somebody who way back in the day really enjoyed ActRaiser, this is absolutely a must-buy. If you're somebody who's looking for a fun, quirky game, this might not be for you. This is fun, this is entertaining, but it certainly has a lot of difficulty and a lot of a steep learning curve that I do think that a casual audience won't be able to handle. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Being an angel with a giant flaming sword is kind of awesome, by the way. I just want to say that here at the end. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.